Hello students, welcome for the minor course on object-oriented programming in Java, having course code ITTM51 lecture number 3. So in the previous class we have discussed regarding the different flavors of programming language, and we have focused on the different characteristics of procedural oriented programming language and the need of object-oriented programming language. That is, we have discussed the different drawbacks which was there with the procedural-oriented programming language. So, in today's class, we are going to discuss the different features or the characteristics of any object-oriented programming language. So, in this particular class, we are going to touch few of the basic concepts of object-oriented programming language like object, classes, data abstraction, data encapsulation, polymorphism, inheritance, dynamic binding, and the message passing. So, the very first characteristics or the very first essential feature of any object-oriented programming language is called as the object, right? So, the question which arises that what is the object? So object is anything which is having certain properties or which can perform certain functions or the options. That particular entity can be defined as an object. Means when I'm talking about the objects is having some attributes like, let's say, color, size, number of tires. These are the attributes for the particular entity or the particular object, whereas that particular entity should perform the operation. If I'm talking about the real world, so in real world each and everything we can define as an object. So the things which are having some properties and which can perform some operation, that particular entity or that particular thing can be termed as an object. So when I'm talking about what is the use of object in case of object oriented programming language, so object are nothing but the very key feature or the very key component in your object oriented programming language, because objects are the one through which your object oriented program is get executed, right? So when I'm talking about the objects, so the objects are basic runtime entities of an object oriented programming language. Then the objects may represent a person, a place, or an atom, or anything, provided that particular thing or that particular person or that particular place should have some attribute and should perform certain function. So whenever that particular entity is having certain attribute and having some function, then we can term that particular entity as an object. So if I'm considering example of a car, so I can say a car as an object because car is having the attributes like model, year of manufacturing, color. So these are nothing but the attributes or the data members of a car entity. Whereas car can perform the operation like start operation, move operation, or the stop operation. So in that sense, we can say that a car is an object. So what is the use of the car objects? So when we write the program using object-oriented programming language, in order to execute whatever the logic we are written or whatever the program we have written, we require the objects. Means in case of object-oriented programming language, we are writing certain classes. In classes, we are writing some functions, we are writing some data members. And in order to access that particular data member or the member function, we require the objects. Means without object we cannot access the content of the class or the content of the program. So that is what the importance of the objects. Whereas for a single program we can create n number of objects. For example, if I'm just considering the example of bank, right? So in bank there are the different entities, like we are the customers, there the account is there, then in the account we are having saving accounts, current account, we are having loan account. So as a customer, when we are performing some operation with your account, so customer and account both are nothing but the objects, right? Whereas the customer and account, these objects are interacting with each other so that the intended operation for the customer should be get executed. Means what? Whenever we are talking about or whenever we are saying that we are performing some operation, so actually the objects are communicating with each other for that particular class or for that particular program. And via that your message or your communication is carried out in the actual program. So for example, the customer and account are the two objects in a program. Then the customer object may send a message to the account object requesting for the bank balance. So the communication is actually carried out between the objects. Whereas each object contains the data and the code to manipulate the data or to perform the operation. Hope this is quite clear that what is the object. Now in another word, I can say a laptop as an object, I can say human being as an object. How? If I'm saying a laptop as an object, because laptop is having some attribute, like laptop is having some manufacturer, it is having some processor, it is having certain RAM, it is having some size. So based on to that, these are the attributes. Whereas when I'm talking about the operation of the laptop, so no, laptop can get start, it can execute some operation, I can play the game, I can see the video. So these are what the different operation the laptop can perform. And as the laptop is having the attribute and the operation, so I can say that the laptop is an object, right? So these are what the objects. The next and very important feature of your object oriented programming language, because we have seen what is the need of object oriented programming language, and the need is to just overcome the limitation of your procedural oriented programming language. And the limitations were, that is the security, the second is the reusability and the extendability. So again, question might arise that how we are going to achieve or how we are going to overcome this particular drawbacks in an object oriented programming language. So for that, the very first feature which we are having, or one of the major pillar of object oriented programming language, is called as data encapsulation. So when I'm talking about data encapsulation, we everybody must have heard about the term that is called as a capsule. So what is this capsule? The capsule is nothing but what? That is the outer covering we are having, and inside that we are having certain medicine. And why we are putting that outside covering to that medicine? Because that particular medicine should not be exposed directly to the outside, right? And that is the reason why we are putting that outside coating, in order to protect, in order to prevent, in order to secure the content inside that particular capsule. So same is the case. So when I'm talking about a data encapsulation in object oriented programming language, so we are using the data encapsulation to provide the security. That was the constraint in case of procedure oriented programming language, and we want to address this particular constraint. And to address this particular constraint in object oriented programming language, we are having the feature that is called as data encapsulation. So we are relating the encapsulation with the capsule. So what we are doing? So when I'm talking about the capsule in terms of your object oriented programming language, so the outside covering which the capsule is having, that outside covering we call it as a class. Whereas inside the class, that is if I'm talking about the capsule, so inside the outside covering we are having some medicine, we are having some content. So in object oriented programming, that outside covering is nothing but your class. Whereas inside that class, that is the content of the class, having the variables and the method. So that is how we are preventing the content of the class, that is we are preventing the methods and variables, and to the outside world the only outside capping, that is the only class name will be visible. And that is how we are maintaining, or we are ensuring the security in case of your object oriented programming language. That is, encapsulation is the first pillar of object oriented programming language. In other words, encapsulation is the process, that is what we are doing. We are just binding the data together inside the outside covering. That is, we are having the outside covering, and inside that we are having some content. Whereas that content is nothing but what? That is the data members and the member function. So when I'm talking about the data members, that is simply the variables, like we are defining in the C, that is int a, b, c, right? Or float or character or string, that whatever we have defined, that is nothing but the variables. So the variables are nothing but called as a data members in case of your object oriented programming language. And the next content which that binding or which that class is having, that is called as a member function, whereas a member function is also called as the methods or also called as the functions. So we are binding this data members and member function together, and this particular property or this particular foundation or this particular binding is nothing but called as the encapsulation. Whereas we are achieving the encapsulation in case of object oriented programming language by means of the class. So class is the best example of the encapsulation. For example, if I'm taking the example of medical store, right? If I'm talking about the medical store, so there are multiple medicine or there are many medicines which are kept into the medical store. But when we go to the medical shop to purchase or to buy some medicines, what we do? We just give the prescription to the person, that is a medical representative, right? That medical representative go to the particular place where that particular medicine is placed, and he is giving you the required medicine, right? That is only the chemist, that as a customer we are not having the access to the medicine directly. That is, in order to get the medicine, we have to give the prescription to the that medical store representative. That particular person will be having the access to all the medicines. He will go to the respective place where the medicine is kept, and from there he will be giving us the medicine. So the chemist knows what medicines to give to you. This reduces the risk of you taking any medicine that is not intended for you. That is what, by means of maintaining this protocol or by means of maintaining this hierarchy, we are ensuring that the security should be maintained, right? That the customer should not get any mislead medicine or the medicine which is not intended for that particular customer. So that is what we can say the real time example or the real world example for the encapsulation. That is what, maintaining the security. So in this case, if I'm talking about this particular example, so your medicine is nothing but your data members or the member variables or the variables. Then your chemist, that is the person who is going to give you the medicine, he is nothing but the member methods, because this chemist is having the access to the medicines, and you, that is the customer, is nothing but the external application or a piece of code which is trying to access or which is trying to get the medicine. But as a customer, I cannot get the medicine directly. In order to get the medicine, I have to communicate or I have to give my requirement to the member method, that is the chemist. And chemist is the one who is having the entire authority to provide the medicine or to give the medicine to the external code or to the external application. And that is how we are ensuring the security by means of the encapsulation. Hope this example is quite clear. And that is what, when you are talking about encapsulation, we are achieving the encapsulation by means of the class. And when I'm talking about the class is the collection of your data members and your member function. Whereas the accessibility of this particular content, that who should access the particular content, right, that is defined by the programmer when the programmer is defining the class. And for that sake, we are having the access specifier. That is what, accessibility specification that the programmer is providing. And those access specifiers are nothing but the public, private and protected. So the way we are going to define our data members and the member function, according to that particular entity will be accessible to the outside world. If it is public, it is accessible to the outside world. If it is private, the access is restricted. That is what, the content of that particular entity cannot be accessible to the outside world. So that is what the encapsulation. So through encapsulation, data is not accessible to the outside world, but those only which are wrapped in the class can access it. That is what, if you are wrapping the member function and the data members inside the class, so the class under which those data members and member functions are defined, that class is going to have the access of that particular data. Then encapsulation solves the problem at the implementation level, and a class can specify how accessible each of its members should be. That is what, by means of defining the access specifier. if you are defining some data members or the member function as a public, so that particular data member or member function can be accessible inside the class as well as the outside the class. When you are defining those data members or the member function as a private, so it cannot be accessible outside the class. That is what, that particular data members and the member function will only be accessed or can only be accessed within that particular class. Whereas when we are defining it as a protected one, then the accessibility ranges from that particular class to the next class which is derived from that particular class. So we are going to see this thing in a much more detail, or we are going to demonstrate this public, private and protected with the help of sample programs. So encapsulation means what? It is what? Providing the security. That is what means hiding the important features of the class which is not being needed to be exposed to the outside world or outside of a class. Here hidden part of a class acts as encapsulation and exposed part of a class acts as abstraction. So that is what our next property, that is a data abstraction. So we'll talk about that. So in order to achieve the data encapsulation feature of object-oriented programming language, we are having the programming feature that is called as class. Or in other words, we are achieving the data encapsulation using class. So how we are going to define the class? So class is a user-defined data type. Like we have seen in C that there are two different types of data type we are having. That is a primitive data types and second is a user defined data types. When I am saying that the data type is user defined, it does mean that user is having the complete control how he wants to define that particular data type or what name the user wants to give to that particular data types. So in case of C, the user defined data types were like array, structure, function, union, all these were the user defined data types. So like that, in case of object oriented programming language, your class is also a user defined data types. Means the class name is the wisdom of the user or the programmer, that which class name user wants to give, and again by abiding or by following the rules of variable. So classes are user defined data types and it behaves like built-in types of programming language, whereas the class name is defined by the user. Then in order to access the content of the class, as I discussed earlier, that whatever we are defining, whatever we are writing inside the class, if you want to execute the content of the class or if you want to access the content of the class, we require the objects, because objects are the runtime entity which is having the access to the content of the class. Then objects are again the user defined entity, that objects are defined by the user, whereas objects are the variable of the class, and using these objects one can access the content of the class. So once a class has been defined, we can create any number of objects for that particular class. Means a single class can have n number of objects, and using that n number of objects we can access the content of the class. So in other words, a class is a collection of objects of similar type. So this is what regarding classes. Then next, that what is the syntax or how we are going to write the class. So as we have defined that class is the collection of data members and the member function. So we are having the keyword or predefined data type, that is the class, whereas user is going to define this class name. So class name and the body of the class is going to have the two things, that is the data members or variables and the member function or the methods. One very common question we usually ask, if suppose I remove this data members and the member function, so whether we can call that particular definition as a class or not. But the question, what I'm saying, key, now I have defined the class definition as that class is the collection of data members and member function. If suppose I just remove this data members and the member function, can we term that particular class as a class or not? or whether the compiler will compile this particular definition or not. So the answer is yes. Although the class is not having any definition or the class is not having any body, but still your compiler will compile that particular class. Whereas if the class is not having any body, or if the class is not having any data member or the member function, in that case that particular class is called as the empty class. These are not the mandatory contents of the class or the body of the class. Either the class can only have the data members, or the class even can have the member function, or the class may not have the data members and the member function. And in all these scenarios, the class is a valid one. So this is how we are going to write the class, and in upcoming classes we are going to write down the program using these classes. And class is what the heart of your object oriented programming language. In almost every program we are going to write down the class, we are going to define the body of the class, we are going to create the objects for the class, we are going to access the content of the class using the objects. So these things are quite much more needed, or it is what very frequently used. So the next feature of the object oriented programming language, or the next pillar of object oriented programming language, is the data abstraction. You must have heard about the term that is abstraction. What does it mean? So the term abstraction means what? To abstract. If suppose I am just considering the example of student, right? When we are admitting to the college, we are submitting the different information about ourselves. Like we are submitting our personal information, we are submitting our contact information, we are submitting our academic information, we are submitting our financial information, we are submitting our family background information, we are submitting our extracurricular or your strengths or different activities which you can perform. So when you are submitting this information to the college, that is, the college is having entire information about the student. But now when this information is used by the different people in the college, let's say if I am a teacher, if I want to access your information, so which information I am more keen about, or which information I'll be requiring? But obviously as a teacher I'll be keen into your personal information, your contact information and your academic information. Whereas I do not have to do anything about your financial information, your family background or your other curricular activities, right? So from the data which you have provided to the college, so from that particular data I will only abstract the data which is of my use. That is what I will be accessing: your personal information, your contact information and the academic information. Whereas if I replace myself with the, let's say, the account person, so if the account person wants the information about any student, so but obviously he is going to see your financial stuff, that is what is the income of your family, know whether you are opting for the scholarship or a EBC, know what fees should be occurred for a particular student, and based on to that he will be deciding that what fees the student should pay, right? So again the information is quite common, that is the college is having the collective information, but with respect to the person they are abstracting the required information, and that is what called as the abstraction. Means in other words, that is fetching the required details other than the background details. Means what? We are having the plenty of the information, but out of the plenty of the information we are only abstracting, we are only fetching the required information or the information which is of use to me, right? And that particular thing is called as the abstraction. So abstraction refers to the representation of necessary features, right? The things which is required for that particular activity, that is the necessary features, without including more details or the explanation. That is called as the abstraction. So data abstraction is a programming or a technique that relies on the separation of interface and the implementation. Means while writing the program, I am writing so many functions or so many things in the program, but if suppose I am considering the example of student, let's say I am writing one program for the student, and in that particular program I am defining each and everything about the student. And when let's say your program is or your program is accessed by the a particular person, let's say the company person. So as a company person, what information he's interested in? But obviously that person must be interested in your academic qualification or your other achievements or your certification. So I do not need to expose the other details like your personal details, your family background, your financial details, like that. So with respect to what is required or what is the useful information for that particular scenario or for that particular purpose, only that particular information should be make it available, or that particular information should be exposed, and that is what called as the abstraction. So if I'm taking the simple example that when we are pressing the key on the keyboard, the the key which we are pressing, that particular character is appear on the screen. You do not need to only buy this, but we never worried about that how exactly it works, because that is not required. And when I'm saying that the keyboard is having plenty of buttons, but the moment I'm pressing the particular button, only that character is been displayed, or only that particular character is shown on the screen. So that is what called as a data abstraction. That is what one of the simplest example for the abstraction, that I'm having the so many keys on the keyboard, but keyboard is only or keyboard is only appearing that particular character which I'm pressing on the keyboard. So that is what abstraction, that is keyboard is abstracting the character which I'm pressing other than the other buttons. So it is not no showing, or it is not appearing the other characters on the screen. It is only appearing the character which I pressed on the keyboard. So that is one of the simplest example of data abstraction. One more example, that we watch the TV and we use the remote for that. So when we press the particular button on the remote, so that particular channel is only get switched on. It is not like that we press the different button and different activities happening at the on the TV screen. So that is what again the abstraction, that is we are having so many options on the key on your remote, but the remote is abstracting the things that what the user is required. That user wants to increase the volume, so only volume is been increased rather than the changing the channel or setting the color or setting the echo or like that. That is what the abstraction. Then the next and very important feature, so hope these two features are quite clear. That is very first is a data encapsulation and second is a data abstraction. Encapsulation means what? That is hiding the information or securing the information or binding the information with a single name. Whereas abstraction means what? Only displaying the essential features or the required features other than the background details. Then the next and very important feature, that is the third pillar of object oriented programming language, that is called as polymorphism. Whereas this poly means what? You must have heard the term poly and you must have heard the term that is morph. So poly stands for many and morph stands for form. That is what? Many forms. If you can see the example, right, there are certain animals or there are certain living animals. So if I'm saying talking, if I'm just saying that talking, so in case of dog, talking is nothing but barking, that is the dog is talking like oop. If I'm talking about duck, so duck is doing quack, right? If I'm talking about cat, it is meow. When I'm talking about a human being can speak. So the function is same, that is what? Talking or communicating. But with respect to animal to animal, or with respect to this all the different entities, the talking is what? Different. So means what? Talking is a single thing, but different people is talking in a different ways, or a different animals talking in a different way. So in that sense we can say it is a polymorphism. That is what? Act of representing more than one form, or if a single person is performing more than one task, then that is called as a polymorphism. So a polymorphism is a Greek word that is what stands for ability to take more than one form. Like if I'm saying a plus operator or if I'm saying a plus symbol. So using plus symbol I can perform the addition of two numbers. Using the plus symbol I can perform the addition of two strings. Using the plus symbol I can perform the addition of two floating point numbers. So in that case I can say that this plus operator is overloaded because plus operator is performing more than one operation or performing more than one function. If I'm taking very simple example, let's assume ourselves. So whenever we are just listening to the online video, or let's say you are just listening to this online video, so at the same time you might be having some snacks, you might be accessing to your WhatsApp, right? So a single person is performing more than one operation, so that is what the polymorphism. So that is same way functions can be overloaded. So now the question which arises that what is the use of polymorphism, or how we are going to achieve the polymorphism in case of programming. So polymorphism allows us, if suppose you are writing the very bulky or a tedious application which is having hundreds of the functions. So but obviously if you want to perform the hundreds of the function with that particular application, you have to write the different function for each operation. So when you are trying to write the different operations for, or you are trying to write the different functions for each operation, so in that case you need to remember the different function name, which can be sometimes a tedious or the complex job for a programmer or for a user to remember the hundreds of the function name. So in order to avoid this particular thing, that is to write the different function name for the different operation, now we can only write down, or we can write down the same function name which is performing the different operation. So we do not need to remember the different function name for a same sort of a operation, and that is where the function overloading helping the programmer or the user. So if the same function is performing more than one operation, in that case that particular function is called as overloaded function, and this particular phenomena is called as the function overloading. And again it is very important, and we use it very frequently when we write the object oriented programming language, that is writing the same function name to perform the multiple operation. For example, if I am writing the sum function, and if suppose that sum function is performing the operation of two numbers, if it is performing the operation of three numbers, if it is performing the operation on floating point numbers, if it is performing the operation on five numbers, so we can say that the sum function is overloaded one, because performing the operation on two digits is a different thing, performing the operation on three digits is a different thing, performing the operation on floating point number is a different thing. So whenever a same function is performing the multiple operation, so that particular function is called as a function overloading. And when you're talking about a polymorphism as a feature of the object oriented programming language, so there are two different types of polymorphism which is supported by the object oriented programming language. So very first type of polymorphism is called as compile time polymorphism, and second type of polymorphism is called as the runtime polymorphism. If I'm just considering this second example, like if I'm saying that shape function, so using this shape function I can draw the circle, using this shape function I can draw the rectangle, using this shape function I can draw the star. So we can say that the shape function is overloaded one, because the function is same, but we are drawing the circle, we are drawing the rectangle, we are drawing the star, we are drawing the square, we can draw the rectangle, like so the same function is performing the multiple operation, and that is what called as the polymorphism. So that's it for this particular class. Hope you people are hope you people got the concept of data encapsulation, data abstraction, and the third is polymorphism. So the last property of object oriented programming language, or the fourth pillar of object oriented programming, is left, that is called as inheritance. So we'll be continuing with that in the next class. So see you in the next class. Thank you.